Justified in questions. Justified in getting answers. Matt Palumbo and Booker Scott are justified. This is the PB&J Podcast.
Thursday night, Donald Trump addressed the nation, or at least part of the nation, unfortunately. And then he declassified thousands of documents that may shed light on what happened in the 2020 election. At least there are investigations going on now. I don't know that it's going to do any good until people have leg shackles on their feet and their hands are cuffed. I'm Booker, and this is the PB&J Podcast. My co-host every week is a guy named Matt Palumbo. He is a best-selling author and a former content director of the Bongino Report. Matt, what did you make of the speech on Thursday night?
Well, I unfortunately don't think the speech itself is going to change really any minds on either side, in that if you think there's mass voter fraud, what Trump was telling you is just confirmation of more of the same. If, you're in the CNN crowd, you're going to be screaming it's debunked and discredited even before Trump has released a single shred of evidence. And even if the evidence is quite damning, they're just going to claim it's been debunked by fact checkers or experts or whoever they want to quote. So, I think that's unfortunate. But if what Trump says is true, there are going to be bombshells coming out soon. So it's one of those things where we'll have to, wait to see it to believe it. Unfortunately, I don't think the other side is going to believe it regardless. But, what would be good, I think what would be useful to have too is, a sort of unified theory of election fraud, in that, is it ballot harvesting? Is it mail-in vote fraud? Is it, them turning votes after suspiciously stopping counting them? Was there Venezuelan influence? Is it Chinese influence? There's so many different theories where, maybe it's a little bit of each, but it would be useful to know, like, which is the dominant way fraud is occurring, if it is, and then we can focus on that. One of the things that I think could work against us in the fraud debate or discussion is just blanketly claiming any election loss is fraud. Well, if you end up believing that or become convinced of that, there really is no point in voting as a Republican. And that, I don't want people to be disenfranchising themselves from voting because they think every single election is corrupted. Some of them are, I think most are not, but there is clearly the left clearly has a vested interest in there being no investigation into this at all. I mean, if you think there's no evidence, they'd be saying, no, please go ahead and investigate it. You're not going to find anything. And it was just the other week we heard Alyssa Slotkin make a comment to the effect of, well, if the SAVE Act is passed, Democrats aren't going to win elections anymore. And I'm thinking, well, that's a very interesting thing to say, because we know what the real implication of that is. Now, I think the left is going to spin that and say, oh, no, she meant the SAVE Act will disenfranchise people. No, we know what that she really meant. It's going to disenfranchise people who commit voter fraud. So that's sort of my takeaway. I hope there's a lot of good information that comes out, but when I see it, I'll believe it.
Going into the speech on Thursday, I was reading articles. You probably did as well. The Associated Press had an article out saying, using the words like unproven allegations, and that's what they do all the time. And they said that's what the speech is going to be about. And yet you have many different layers in this. You have the voter rolls was mentioned. And we're going to get into that conversation here in just a minute, because we have a special guest, Mark Davis, who knows everything about Georgia. There's a lot going on in Georgia right now with the FBI. We're going to get him in here to have a discussion about that. But you have the voter rolls, you have China, then you have possibly the CIA paying China, or China paying the CIA to pay journalists. That's not the First Amendment. That's collusion, and to have a coup, to overthrow a government. And so that's pretty serious if it can be proven. And I think that's what they're going to try to work on. And who knows, like I said, I think until people are cuffed and stuffed, that it's really not going to make a difference, not going to make an impact on the people that really need to have an impact made on them. And that's what I took out of Thursday night. And I sort of mentioned it as we started this hour together that, half the country probably saw that. You had ABC, NBC, CBS, who else? MSNBC or MS Now, whatever they are now, CNN. They decided not to do it live. CNN was editing it as they went, determining what was the truth and not, which is part of the reason why we're here to begin with. Let's go to John King of CNN. This is what he said before the speech on Thursday.
Reminder to our viewers, we'll be watching tonight's presidential address and listening to what the president says tonight. But we're not going to take it live, as we've been discussing. That's because this president, sadly, has a history of misleading and in some cases simply false statements on what
false statements if you are the mainstream media.
A history of lying and false statements, which CNN has never been known to do.
No, not at all. And then CNN, they did the entire Joe Biden address. And let's go back and show you this one. This is what CNN played for the American people.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. MAGA Republicans have made their choice. They embrace anger. They thrive on chaos. They live not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies.
Do you remember that speech, Matt?
Oh, I do.
Yeah. It was like he was a Nazi.
He was speaking to me directly.
Well, Mark Davis is a guy that has been around Republican politics in Georgia his entire life. His father was Guy Davis. He ran for governor in 1986. Very successful campaign for a Republican at the time, because at the time Georgia was heavily Democrat. Not so much the case anymore. And down there you have a cast of characters around the 2020 election, like Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. You had Gabriel Sterling, who left the government, went in as a private individual to run that 2020 election. Both of those guys are in the sphere of Mark Davis, our next guest here on the program. Mark writes, contributes for The Federalist. That's where Molly Hemingway is. So you can see some of his work there. He has been involved with election integrity for 23 years. He's been or 30 years. He's been an expert witness for 23. And he's been in data for, 40 years. It's been his life. So long before the 2020 election, he was concerned with voter rolls in the state of Georgia. We're going to bring him in now for a conversation, and maybe he can shed some light on exactly what's happening in Georgia, because about 6 months ago, we know the FBI went and they raided the Fulton County election warehouse. I haven't heard anything about that, which I thought was sort of odd, because it has been so long and we haven't heard anything about it. And then we now have FBI agents from across the country, over 200 of them, that have been surged into Georgia, and they were given a deadline of July 17th to finish their work. So July 17th is now passed. They are supposed to have finished the work that they were there to do, and I'm not sure what work they were there to do. But Mark Davis is here. Mark, welcome to the program. Great to have you. You've been on the radio show a couple of times, but it's great to see your face. Thank you for coming in.
Always good to talk with you. We always have a good chat.
Yeah, we do, whether it's on the phone or on one of these shows.
Yeah.
So let's first start this conversation with your conversation with the Department of Justice, because I think that's a pretty important part of this. This happened last fall. And let's start there with the story.
Well, last fall, I finally heard from the Trump DOJ on September 10th, the same day Charlie Kirk was shot. And then I didn't hear anything for several months. And then I got a call on January 15th asking me to come in on the 16th. And they were interviewing a bunch of Georgia folks right around that time period. And then a couple weeks later, they wound up going into Fulton County. It's been kind of quiet up until recently, when we heard about the surge of 260 agents. And, that's something to really think about. I mean, they're pulling agents from all over the country. I imagine they're probably having to pay their travel expenses, their lodging, meals, maybe overtime, what have you. They're pulling them off other important work. So to me, that's a pretty big deal. And of course, it was also a very big deal when we learned from Fulton County themselves that they were the subject of a federal grand jury investigation. And one point I want to make here is, you guys mentioned earlier all these different issues and what's really the focus and all this kind of stuff. Well, every election case I've ever been involved in, what we do is we set up buckets. And when we use the term bucket, it's a group of issues that are similar in nature. And so you might have a bucket over here that's about residency issues. You might have a bucket over here about absentee ballot issues. You might have another bucket of districting issues. And so just because they wanted to look at the roster of employees who touched ballots in the 2020 election, that may just be part of one bucket. We don't really know what they're looking at. I know they heard a lot of information from a lot of people, and I know a lot of those people personally. They're quality people. They know what they're talking about. Each of us that they interviewed had different issues to talk about, different issues to raise. So we don't really know where they're focused. And this deadline of the 17th, I've been hearing that for days myself. And I now have reason to believe that that might have been a construct, at least all or in part, at least, of the media. So their work obviously continues. One thing that I was really impressed with last night is President Trump seemed to stay pretty on script, even with his new teleprompter operator. We heard about that. And, that's kind of impressive for President Trump. You don't ever know what he's going to say when he gets in front of a microphone. But he stayed kind of on script. And from what I'm hearing about the documents that were released, they kind of cover some of the groundwork he covered last night. But I almost feel like he's kind of baiting the press here. One person that I'm following really closely on all of this stuff is John Solomon, because I know he's right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more to come. Like, we didn't hear anything about the Georgia issues. That's still to come. And I think there's also more information that's going to be coming out of the administration. But I feel like they may be baiting the media into taking positions that are untenable. And as time goes by, they may drib and drab more information out there that kind of shows them for having the bias that they have.
Mark, let's talk about what you specialize in and voter rolls and taking a look at that data and what you found in Georgia for the 2020 election, because I know that you were ready to testify in, was it Trump's case, or what case were you ready to testify
versus
in?
Raffensperger, and I never got a subpoena from Fannie Willis, but I volunteered to go down there and testify in that one if they needed me. But one of the big issues that I've been raising for years is residency violations. It would be fair to use the word residency fraud. But in election cases, I'm usually very, very hesitant to use that word because it's inflammatory and it's usually not necessary. Just proving the violation occurred is all it takes. And if you use the word fraud, then you kind of raising your bar that you have to get over, and it's not necessary usually. But yeah, we have a lot of it. And it's an issue that I've quantified from 2020. There were about 35,000 records that I gave President Trump's attorneys that I thought needed to be investigated. In 2022, the number was about 26,000. And in 2024, the number was about 36,000. I only did that analysis. It's a lot of work. I only did that analysis on general elections. I did not do it on presidential preference primaries, state primaries, runoffs, general election runoffs, what have you. So I offered the DOJ and the FBI 97,000 records in total that I think warrant an investigation. That count is low, definitely low, because it does not include the violations from all those other kinds of elections. neither the GBI nor the FBI or anybody has ever actually investigated that. You hear these claims from the media, oh, all those issues were investigated and they were all debunked. Well, no. If the issues I raised had been actually investigated, it would have been one of the largest criminal investigations, if not the largest, in Georgia history.
Why didn't it get investigated? Why do you think that
My
is?
theory is there's no appetite for it. It would cost millions of dollars. It would take years, and it could never be completed. You'd have voters who died or left the country or couldn't be located. You'd never be able to get to the end of it. And that's why I call these systemic regularities. And when I use that term, I'm using the Georgia Supreme Court's own definition of it from page 15 of Smith versus Long County. And that is issues that cannot be quantified in the same discrete manner as paradigm number one, which is discrete inquiry, but occur in numbers sufficient to place the outcome of an election in doubt.
Did you have that in 2020, you think? Trump lost by 11,000 votes.
11,779. And, just my bucket of issues that I contributed was around 35,000. Now it's, all of those in a criminal context would have to be individually adjudicated. And there's probably some red herrings in the mix there. But what happens is we have voters that come back by the thousands after every election, and they finally get around to updating their voter registrations to where they're supposed to be voting. And that address matches the same one they told the post office they were moving to months or years ago.
Yeah.
So they're kind of providing corroborating evidence on themselves. And to me, these issues can't be much clearer. And I've got a couple of solutions to the problem I've been working on with the Georgia legislature. One I've had in the mix for a couple of years, but I recently got involved in a case in Arkansas, and I was blown away. I found almost no residency fraud in Arkansas.
Really?
And when I started looking into it, I learned what they do. They run NCOA on the voter data. They push the matches into the poll pads, and then the clerks can stop residency fraud cold. But then they do something really interesting. Here in Georgia, if you move within the same county, you can just update your registration and you can keep voting, no problem. But if you move to a new county, which is a new legal jurisdiction, you can't do that. Well, in Arkansas, last year, they passed a bill that changed their law so that if you're already registered in the state of Arkansas and you move even across county lines, you can just update your registration and keep voting. So what they've literally done is our mantra: make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. It's exactly what they did. And
we do that in Florida.
Yes, do that.
Yeah, we do that in Florida too, Mark. I've moved a few times, and every time I move and change my driver's license, they ask me, do I want to change my registration? And I do, so that kills it in the other county where I did live. So I think that's a good plan.
The problem is
go ahead.
Our law has no teeth on the law that requires us to update our driver's license. People will go months or years without doing it.
Yeah. But if they're only voting once, then that's not the big issue that I think we're talking about.
No.
Because, we're talking about, they leave one county, maybe they leave the state, then someone in China steals someone's identity, they find that person, they then print their own ballots and fill it out based on a person that no longer lives in a jurisdiction. And I think that's a little bit about what Trump was talking about last night. I've got a clip here, and I'm going to play it, and I'll come back to you, Mark. But here's a little bit about Donald Trump and what he said about China and ballots and everything else that he thinks happened in 2020.
The third set of documents, we are releasing proves that for many years, Americans were blatantly lied to about the security of our election infrastructure, including electronic voting machines and ballot counting systems, dishonest, almost all. They're vulnerable and they're easily compromised, and people within our government knew that. Tonight, we're publishing a series of previously classified U.S. intelligence community assessments and other reports proving that our government has long known these machines are extremely exposed to attack.
And Matt, this is what you were talking about. We've known that. That's not new information for us, is it, Mark? We have known that for several years. There have been reports going all the way back, I guess, to 2018 or 19, and in those reports, it was Democrats, people like Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren, that were signing off on those reports. Mark, I'm going to come back to you, though. I want to ask you about Brad Raffensperger and your relationship with him and Gabriel Sterling. I know that Gabriel Sterling, when he was a kid, was hanging out at your house, and he was one that claimed that Georgia was a very clean election, and maybe the cleanest ever. He ran it in 2020. I don't know what else he would say if he ran it, but it wasn't. We still have hundreds of thousands of ballots with no chain of custody in Georgia, and he still claims that it is real. And I know that personally you had the opportunity to go to work for Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. Can you talk about that with us here?
Well, his political consultant was a friend of mine named Mark Roundtree, who Gabe Sterling and Jordan Fuchs used to work for. And I've known Gabe since he was 15, which was also 1986. And yeah, he used to come to our house. He was friends with my youngest brother, and he'd be there every now and then, come to parties and whatnot. And in 2018, Mark Roundtree invited me to help coach Brad Raffensperger on the 1993 NVRA, election integrity issues in general, issues and obstacles he might face as Secretary of State or whatnot. And then after he got elected, I went and met with him, and he asked me if I was interested in a position on his staff, and at the time I couldn't do it. I have a business to run and all that. And I told him I couldn't, but I would help coach him. And then the other time we talked about it was in the summer of 2020. I got involved in a little bitty case down in Long County, Georgia, that wound up having major implications. It wound up being a double voting case. It was the first time in my career I'd ever found evidence of double voting. I now understand that Georgia has 3 different kinds of double voters. And going back to what you were talking about earlier, it's long been theorized that if someone has NCOA capability and access to the voter rolls, then they might be able to hijack the registrations of voters who left the state and didn't cancel their registrations. But there's also another set of anecdotal evidence that says, well, we have voters that are sometimes registered several times, and there may be bad actors that hijack one of those additional registrations and then move that voter elsewhere. So there's all kinds of issues like that. And then there's another one that's of real concern that's been documented by a couple of different analysts. One of them I have an immense amount of faith in, and that's called flapping. And what this is, I'm told that's the proper term for it anyway. What this is when a voter record comes onto the rolls, stays for a while, leaves the rolls, comes back for a while, leaves for a while. It just goes on and off the rolls. And, there are instances where a voter record can be immediately removed from the rolls. But in most instances, you're talking about putting a voter on inactive. They've got to stay on inactive through 2 federal elections. Then they got to get put on the purge list. They got to receive a purge notice. There's this whole lengthy process. So these voters that are flapping on and off the rolls are a real concern. And there are some analysts who say that, it happens a lot right around an election where they're put on the rolls long enough to vote and then they disappear again. And then there's another major issue that needs to be dealt with, and I know it's happening at least in Georgia and in Michigan because I've talked to other analysts about it. If you think about the way the voter rolls function, it's a relational database. You have a header record and you have a trailer record, or a set of trailer records. The header record has got your name and address and your voting districts and your county and all that good stuff. And then each time you vote, a little bitty trailer record is generated that's credit for voting. And so if you think about it, once an election is held and then it's certified, that record of who voted should be absolutely cast in stone. It should never change, right? But when we go to get vote history trailer records here and in Michigan, and we download them, you'll see a date and time stamp that's recent. And what you get in that file may be different from what you would have gotten if you had downloaded it right after the original election. And I think there's something really sketchy about that. Those vote history records, once the election is certified, they should be published. That record should be cast in stone, and it should never change. And that's what drives election integrity advocates up the wall. Everything is always a moving target. The voter list is a moving target. The subset of the voter list that's called the qualified list of electors is a moving target. The vote history trailers is a moving target. All the numbers are always a moving target. Nothing ever seems to work out. And it just drives outside observers and election watchdogs absolutely crazy.
Hey, Matt, do you have any questions you want to jump in here with Mark?
I think you kind of covered a lot of ground. I don't know. I don't think I could ask anything that would be any more informative than you gave. But I guess I guess in a general sense, are there any election fraud theories you take the most seriously or think have the most credibility on a national scale versus? I just feel like I sort of see everything on social media, from things I find plausible to like Venezuela flying in ballots in the middle of the night, which I feel like are probably not credible. So I don't know. Do you have any, I guess, opinion on in the 2020 election in particular? Is there a dominant theory that you think makes sense?
Well, when it comes to the 2020 election, there was a court case called Curling versus Raffensperger, and in it, the plaintiffs got a court order to disclose the ballot images from the recount. They wanted the ones from the original election, but they had been deleted. Well, in my opinion, deleting a ballot image is deleting an election record, and that's a crime under Georgia law and federal law. I guess that's a question for a lawyer, but when they asked for those records, they got 60 counties worth from the recount. And when they started digging into it, they found that about a half a dozen of those counties had overshared the data. They had included the SQL Lite database that's at the heart of the machine. And analysts were able to access that, and that's where they found the hard-coded Dominion master password that was in use here in Georgia. And then we learned that that's the same hard-coded master password that is being used in other states. And it's now being sold on T-shirts on Amazon, eBay, and Walmart.com. And it's a blatant security issue. And CNN reported in 2024, when it came out in the Curling case, that the state was not going to update our software to correct that issue until after the 2024 election. Well, that update still hasn't happened. And what's maddening is that security issue was first published on the EAC's own website back around 2010. So it was a known issue when we bought the system in 2019. And then we've had it ever since, and we're probably going to be stuck with it until the contract ends in 2029. And God only knows if we're going to update the machines or not. The legislature has yet to do that. And we may be hopefully going to hand-marked paper ballots, and then the only ballot marking devices that we'll still have would be a few here and there for the disabled, and those hopefully will be upgraded. So I'm hopeful that when we have a change of administration this fall, we'll be able to get a lot of those issues corrected. I see a potential for a dream team. I had a meeting with some other election integrity analysts with Rick Jackson back in March. And after hearing us out, he voiced support for common sense election integrity reforms. And then we've got Greg Dolezal, who's our nominee for lieutenant governor, who's been supportive of election integrity for years. Then we've got Tim Fleming, who is a lot stronger on election integrity. He's our nominee for secretary of state. And he's stronger than a lot of people give him credit for. And he's going to surprise a lot of his critics. And we've got Brian Strickland, our nominee for AG, who wants to seek concurrent original jurisdiction from the General Assembly for election crime. And if we can get all these guys in place and replace the head of the state election board, maybe we can get the state election board, the Secretary of State's office, the General Assembly, all of our constitutional officers all rowing in the same direction. And then we might actually be able to get a lot done. I mean, these issues, in my book, almost all of them are fixable. It's it's not a question of whether we can, it's a question of whether we have the political will to institute the solutions.
Mark, I have one more question for you, and we'll let you go. I said we would keep you for 15 or 20 minutes. We're a little bit over
No worries.
that.
I'm good.
Okay. The question I have for you is, where do you see this going after Donald Trump's speech on Thursday night, the FBI agents that have been surged there in Georgia, the raid back in January? Where does this end? Are there going to be people held accountable? As I said, I think that that's what it's going to take for more Americans to understand what happened in 2020, and it's going to take people being arrested. And do you see that happening in Georgia?
I would not be surprised at all for some bombs to drop on Fulton County. I mean, it was like the Wild West in 2020. A lot of policies and procedures weren't properly followed. I'm sure you probably heard about the poll tape issue. That case only got heard because the chairman of the SEB happened to be out of town. The executive director spotted it on the list, got interested in it, and suggested to the other board members that they put it on the calendar to be heard. And they did it while the chairman was out of town. And that case got heard, and it was explosive, and the rest is history. But there's other cases that have been suppressed since 2020. There's one I'm aware of that's very similar to the one that blew up. And there's 3 that I've got in there that still haven't been heard, and they're major cases. One of them involves the exact same data that Raffensperger and Trump were arguing about in that phone call. It still hasn't been heard to this day. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot on the table. And if you look at that poll tape issue, you know, when you've got all but one early vote center that just decides not to comply with the rules and just decides to do things their own way, that starts to look like a management decision to me. And a management decision like that starts to look kind of like a conspiracy when you're talking about violating rules or laws. And I think there's a lot of examples of procedures that weren't properly followed. There were ballots that were scanned multiple times. There was a lot of sketchy stuff found in the ballot data. You know, and when the FBI gets through going through all those actual paper ballots, I don't know how well they're going to match up with what the paperwork says.
If there's a conspiracy, who's behind it in the state of Georgia? Is it Raffensperger and Kemp, Gabe
That
Sterling?
becomes a really good question, because here in Georgia, our elections are run by the counties, but in conjunction with the Secretary of State. So one of the questions that I've always had this whole time is, okay, they've gone into Fulton County. Once they get a good look at what they got from Fulton County, are they going to turn around and go into the Secretary of State's office? And if they do, have records been scrubbed since 2020, and think issues like that? I mean, I don't think, if I was in the FBI, I don't think I'd have to look very hard to find major issues that I would find of huge concern.
Yeah.
So nothing's going to shock me. I mean, they may decide to kind of come back and just make some points, or score some points, however you want to look at the situation. But they may come back with a very thorough analysis of what didn't happen in 2020 and lay it all out so we all know. And it's high time this stuff got to look. I mean, we very rarely prosecute anybody in Georgia for election crime. In fact, our AG, to my knowledge, has not prosecuted a single election crime in the decade he's been in the office. To me, his office is where election cases go to die. What few prosecutions we have had in the past decade have come from county DAs. And here in the last year or two, our Secretary of State has taken it upon himself in some instances to bypass the state election board and the Attorney General entirely, and just go directly to county DAs with certain cases. But the problem there is county DAs are sometimes overwhelmed with street crime or don't have the expertise necessary to handle election cases. So we need an Attorney General that has concurrent original jurisdiction, so that in those instances they can step in and they can handle those cases.
Well, Mark, thank you very much. I appreciate you making the time for us here on the program.
Anytime.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we'll all wait and watch and see what happens in Georgia, maybe in Michigan. Yeah, we'll keep our fingers crossed. But Mark, thank you very much. I do
Mark.
appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
Tired of struggling with low energy? We get it. That's why we created organic energy juice. You'll have natural energy all day, and you'll never struggle with low energy again. In just 2 minutes, you can restore your natural energy without chemicals, without stimulants, no toxins, and there is no crash. You shouldn't have to struggle with low energy, and with the organic energy juice, you won't. So if you're struggling with low energy, buying organic energy juice is the right decision. Go to chemicalfreebody.com, use the discount code PBJ, and get your organic energy juice today.
Those big online stores you've been ordering from, they could be as high as 70% Chinese-based sellers. How much money are you giving them? Now, if you're like me, you'd rather support American businesses and get stuff you can actually trust, right? That's why Mammoth Nation exists. It's a one-stop online marketplace where every single seller is a U.S.-based business. You can see it right here on their page. Quality products from companies right here in our country. The best part? Mammoth Nation gives members access to exclusive deals. We're talking some of the lowest prices you're going to find anywhere. Right now, you can join and get 30% off when you use promo code USA. So if you care about where your money goes and you want to save while doing it, check out mammothnation.com today.
I want to go to go ahead, Mark.
I realize there's one thing we should probably clarify from the beginning. Obviously, I know that Trump had declassified a number of things after his speech. I think I was under the impression that there was also more coming after this, which I had referenced in the intro. Am I wrong about that, or is it?
No,
was
you're
it
right.
Okay,
No,
all right. I just wanted to
in
make
fact,
sure I wasn't misleading in any way.
Did you talk about John Solomon? Was it you or was it
No,
Mark?
that was our very good guest.
Okay, Mark.
Yeah.
It was Mark.
Yep.
Yeah, John Solomon has been brought into the White House to deal with all of these things, and he was questioned about that not an interview, but he was getting out of a car and
I saw this.
Did you see that video? Okay,
Yeah,
so,
he didn't really give he just said, we're investigating,
Yeah, he said more to come.
More
he
to
said
come.
the more to come was his answer.
Okay.
So let's go to this other clip here of Donald Trump from Thursday night, and then we'll kind of leave this alone. I want to go to Maine because there was a debate.
It's a lot going on in Maine, man. Somehow it turns out Graham Platner was the best candidate they could find.
Is that not crazy?
It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I would rather have the guy with the Nazi tattoo and the rapist as opposed to these other people. These people are, and keep in mind, it was 600 Democrats that got together and found these people. And where did they find these people from?
Wait till you see what we got coming up for you.
The Chinese government sought to identify U.S. journalists who had reported negatively on the U.S. president and pay them large sums of money to write more negative articles about him, as many as they could, and they didn't care what they said. The Chinese government wanted U.S. president to lose the next election, and the reason they wanted me to lose is because they knew I was wise to them, charged them billions and billions of dollars worth of tariffs, and built the strongest military anywhere in the world. We have the third set of documents we are.
So, Matt, Donald Trump there is talking about China being involved. And that was, did you have a chance to read through those documents? I know when we were talking Thursday night, you hadn't read any of them at that time. I don't know. Have you gone through those documents much, or you're just keeping up with it on social media?
I've gone through them in the sort of headline level analysis and of going through them and just kind of seeing what other people have found, but not me personally.
Yeah, I thought an interesting part, Matt, was the FBI agent that made the comment in an email thread that I'm running a shadow government.
I know. It's like they're calling the deep state a conspiracy. Meanwhile, the deep state's emailing people going, "So I am the deep state, by the way." Send. It's incredible.
and I'm running a shadow government.
And I'm running a shadow government to disenfranchise Americans.
How many millions got taken off of Twitter because they said that they're running a shadow government for Biden?
I know. Yeah, it's
millions of conservatives got thrown off. But you were about to say something. I interrupted you. That's okay.
I feel like he was addressed in the past 30 seconds. No, we're good.
Okay.
All right. We're moving on to Maine.
Let's go to Maine.
That's going to be a very fun story.
Yes, this is incredible. Graham Platner got kicked out. When was that? 2 weeks ago? Because of the rape
Time
allegation.
just blends together at this point.
I know
but,
it is. It's hard
recently.
to believe that we're almost through July, over halfway through. It seems like it was the 4th of July just yesterday. But let's go to the big debate in Maine.
I believe they called it pork bellying. By cutting out the pork bellying from all the bills, I'm sure that would save a lot of money as well. But
all right, David.
I feel as if I'm watching a Saturday Night Live skit.
Yeah.
This.
Well,
But
it can't be
this is
SNL, but it's actually funny, but I guess unintentionally. Yeah, that transgender guy. I mean, obviously it's a guy. Ashley,
which can be a boy or a girl name, which takes me to another Saturday Night Live skit, which was Pat, if you remember Pat.
It's the first, to give him credit, it is the first transgender person with a normal name. They'll usually be like Luna or Astra or something just bizarre thing no real woman would ever want to be called, probably. But someone found his Reddit account, and he had identified as a 5'6" woman on the internet before. He's more than 6 feet tall. He had claimed that he has a period and it is excreted through his butt. Like just bizarre, weird, freaky stuff on this guy. And there's plenty more.
He is the biggest person on the stage.
By a lot, yeah.
But he identifies as 5'6". I would say he's more like a middle linebacker for the Chicago Bears than a 5'6" woman that has her period out her rear end. But, and this brings me to pronouns, Matt. I suck at pronouns. I'm just not good at them. I don't know how I don't know how you feel about it, but the way I think is, okay, if you look like a guy, then I'm probably going to call you he, him, and all the others. So do better. Yeah. I shouldn't have to question. That's on you, not on me. But let's
they purposefully. I mean, I guess I don't even know what to say. Is he putting in an effort? Because it's not working. But there are transgender people that do make it deliberately hard to know which way they're trying to go, and then get mad at you for not knowing.
Yeah, I'll call them her and she. Yeah. I don't have a problem with that in the pronouns if they look like what they're trying to be.
That's the thing. Here's the thing. Obviously, we're not saying we really believe they're a woman. It's an incentive to put in effort. That's right. Yeah, if I just started calling myself Sarah and I put on lipstick, no, not good enough. You got to commit to the bit, or else we're not pretending.
Don't put it on me. Don't put it on me. You do better.
Ashley Webb, what qualifications do you have to serve in the U.S. Senate?
Oh, I ran for office several times. Didn't win, but I did run. And then I'm a songwriter, and then I write my own books. And then I suppose my transparency, I wouldn't lie to the people, and I wouldn't deceive the people like we're being deceived right now. Like,
we wouldn't lie to the people. Your whole identity is a lie. What are we doing?
That is so true.
It's so bizarre. I'm pretending I'm a woman, but I'll never lie to you.
Yeah, you're 6'2", not 5'6".
Yeah. Although there's again, in this case, there's such a little effort being put in that it's almost not even a lie. It's I don't know.
Well, we could have had Graham Platner. We could have had Graham
Platner. It's looking a lot better now.
Yeah, well, there's a couple more people on the debate stage. We'll get to one more here in a minute. But here's Ashley Webb one more time.
And then with the trans community, like, we're being dehumanized. They say that we want to hurt people. I don't want to hurt anybody. I just want to use the bathroom. And if they want me to use the men's room, I will, but I don't want to be assaulted.
He's got my vote.
I'm not assaulting this guy in the men. Why would I assault him? Like, under what? Oh, you're wearing a dress? Take a fit. Like, I just don't understand. I feel like a woman would be far more likely to react negatively to seeing an obvious man in the men's room. To me, I would be going, "Oh, it's another guy. Why is he wearing a dress? Whatever."
No, I think I could understand the point that he's making. If he looks like that and goes into a men's restroom, he could have problems.
I'm just not getting involved. I don't want to say the wrong thing and get accused of a hate crime, so I'm just not looking at him, getting out of there, not punching him either. I don't know. It's here's the thing with the bathroom debate. It's a pretty self-inflicted problem to have. Like we can't have mentally ill people make life complicated for themselves for no reason, and then complain that we're not accommodating them. It's an invented problem. And also, most places have a third bathroom option. Like if you go to, this was a big issue with Target. I feel like this might have even been close to a decade ago, where they were going to start letting trans women, so men, into the women's room, and there were groups against it that were saying like, well, you already have a gender neutral bathroom in all your stores. You have a change, or in some of your stores, you'll have like a changing room that's single use.
Family
so why
room.
not just have them use that? And that's the thing, is it's a solvable problem, and you just have that. I mean, in every public school in America that I'm aware of, the nurse's office has a gender neutral bathroom, a single use bathroom that they could use. So if you're actually interested in solving that quote unquote problem, it has existed forever. It's just, I guess they want social justice brownie points for accommodating a group or something. It's not good.
No, it's not. Well, we have one more to show you from the debate in Maine. Another Rhodes Scholar was there.
And so I have many ideas on this one. And if you'd like to go get a mocktail.
Give me an example of a specific area of oversight that you'd like to have a hearing on.
Well, I'd like to have a lot of hearings.
It's a Sarah Palin answer. All of them. Which, to be fair, I guess is a fine answer to give if that's true. But there was another clip, I can't remember if I sent it to you, where she listed as her credentials that she ran against Susan Collins in the past.
Yeah.
And she lost in a 2-1 blowout in a blue state. She got like 30% of the vote as a Democrat in Maine.
Well,
so,
Maine is a quirky state, but from what I'm seeing here in this debate, I think Susan Collins is pretty secure.
She I wish I checked the odds before we were talking, because the betting line I was monitoring was, will a Republican or a Democrat win that Senate race? It wasn't specific to Collins versus Platner. And Collins was like 55% favorite, almost close to 60%. When Platner dropped out, her odds actually went down to like 35 or so percent, meaning the market was pricing in the fact that Platner was a bad candidate and was optimistic that he would be replaced by someone better than Collins. I assume the market probably has adjusted since then, given we're seeing what they're working with. But no, she's a very safe seat. Despite the state being blue overall, when Trump, I guess I should say with an asterisk, lost in 2020, given who our last guest was and what the discussion is, Trump, lost by 5 points in Maine, or so around that margin. Yeah. She won by around that margin. So there was this like almost 10% gap, I believe. And in fact, I would actually say that's evidence against voter fraud in Maine specifically. I'm not talking about the rest of the nation. But when you have, when only the presidential race, I just feel like they would rig the down ballot races as well if there was going to be fraud in a particular state. So, but anyway, my point being, her seat is very safe regardless.
There were a lot of congressional hearings this past week. Did you watch any of those? You had Todd Blanche in confirmations. You had Erica Schwartz that she said that mRNA vaccines are safe and effective. And a lot of people in the MAGA base are not happy with that answer that Donald Trump had appointed her. And let's see, the Supreme Court justices. You had Kagan and you had Amy Coney Barrett that went and testified in a congressional hearing. And Amy Coney Barrett was talking about how scared she was with the rhetoric and the death threats and having to wear a bulletproof vest, and her children. And a lot of people I know in the MAGA base and America First, they feel that that has really affected Amy Coney Barrett in the decisions she's made.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because I obviously share that concern. But we do have to remember, in her defense, and I'm not a fan of a lot of her rulings, so I'm not saying this as an ACB apologist, but she did vote to strike down Roe v. Wade. And I would say that is probably when there was the peak hysteria and violence threats against the Supreme Court. That's when someone tried to kill Brett Kavanaugh. Yeah. We also, her ruling on birthright citizenship was very disappointing. Unfortunately, I think we were kind of expecting it. And a lot of people had pointed to the fact that she had adopted children from Haiti to say, she's biased in immigration because of that. But right before that, she voted to strike down temporary status for Haitians in this country. So that obviously was not biasing her decisions there. So I think she is I think her bad decisions that we disagree with are actually her opinion. I don't think she's been bullied into them, and that's kind of unfortunate for us to, even more, I would say.
I don't think you and I have had the conversation about Justice Alito and Clarence Thomas.
Mm-hmm. I like Clarence a lot.
Yeah, I like both of them. I think they're great justices. They're 76 and 78 years old. So you have another year of Donald Trump, 2 years of Donald Trump. And let's assume for a moment that a Democrat wins the presidency in 28. You're looking at 86 and 88 years old. You have another Ginsburg situation, and you have a Democrat president that then could, appoint very liberal justices. And should both of these guys be looking at retiring next year?
I mean, it's definitely something they should be giving a thought. I mean, if you are a Democrat, obviously you would want Ruth Bader Ginsburg to have retired. I remember, too, there was this poor couple that they had Ruth Bader Ginsburg officiate their wedding like a week before she died. And, of course, everyone online that was liberal was blaming them for killing her. Like saying, oh, my God, it's in the middle of COVID. How could you? Like, as if Ruth Bader Ginsburg can't make her own decisions. But, sorry, it's a random aside. I mean, yes, but ultimately, yes, I think that is a conversation worth having. Although it is going to be tough to find a justice that's as good as Thomas in particular. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe we should invest in some like Clarence Thomas immortality potion. I don't know.
Yeah, well,
I don't have real ideas on that. But.
Yeah, well, it was Schumer that was running his mouth that incited people to do the things that they did with Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett back around the Dobbs decision and the Roe v. Wade. Did you happen to see Chuck Schumer this week on the Senate floor?
I try not to. What did he say now?
Well, he didn't. It's not what he said. It's what he did. He apparently passed some gas right in the middle of the speech.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I did see this. Him, Swalwell, they can't help themselves.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, TMZ caught up with Schumer on the street. They wanted to find out.
Senator. Senator Jacob with TMZ, did you fart yesterday on the Senate floor?
So no comment.
I mean, it over the course of his career, it's happened at least once.
At least
there's
once.
no way he hasn't multiple. Like there's statistically, it's impossible that he hasn't. Now, in that one moment, we don't know. But
wasn't it Shrek that said "better out than in"?
Probably.
Yeah, just not there on the Senate floor in the middle of a speech. Yeah. Something else we should turn our attention to is a story that came out Friday afternoon, and that has to do with China building American ships in the middle of their deserts. Let's take a look at this together.
Showing China building replicas of U.S. ships in the desert, with some now warning Beijing is using them to conduct military tests. Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin is reporting live on this out of Washington for us. Hello, Jen.
Hi, Sandra. Well, this is a 510-foot 3D replica of an Arleigh Burke-class U.S. Navy destroyer built in the middle of the Taklamakan Desert in China's Xinjiang province. Vantor, an American satellite company, tracked the construction over the past 6 months. The model could be used for potential targeting. It has an exact replica of the helicopter launch system on board, mast, bridge, and deck guns used on this particular American warship.
It's very detailed. I mean, it's super duper detailed compared to earlier ones. Now, we've had targets before that clearly look like Arleigh Burke class destroyers, and we've had targets that clearly look like aircraft carriers, but this one is really just super detailed, which makes me wonder why.
Do you wonder why, Matt? What are they doing?
Well, I think the stated goal is probably pretty obvious, but I guess the good news is that Chinese knockoffs aren't exactly known for their quality, so it'll break in like 15 minutes once it's in the ocean. So
they're not putting it in the ocean; they're targeting it.
I misunderstood. I'm sorry.
No, they're building them so that they can target. And that gentleman that was just speaking there, he went on to say that they may even be using drones to train drones on how to select the best targets on those ships, because they are destroyers. So if you were, going to invade Taiwan and an American carrier group came over with destroyers in it that would be protecting the carrier, then you would want to destroy them first and maybe leave others alone. So you send an autonomous drone and you train them to take out that target. Now, they have done aircraft carriers in the past. They have done jets and other things. And some people say this is China posturing for Taiwan. And they're saying, that's what this is. So I don't know, but it's interesting.
So on that note, forget I made that dumb joke and let's rewind. Hold on, we're rewinding. Yeah, no, I think it's pretty self-evident. I mean, obviously they want America to think that, if we were to go to war with them, perhaps over something like Taiwan could be my guess. They know how to fight our ships. I will say though, I mean, they they're not known for their quality. So
it
they're
could
drones,
be a
that is,
decoy
in this case.
No, it could be a decoy too, because
True.
You remember World War II, they had Patton over in England with the fake tanks and to make them think they were going somewhere else for the invasion when D-Day happened. So maybe that's what it is. I have one more video clip I want to get to here, and this is Catherine Herridge. I have a lot of respect for her. She was with Fox, CBS. And this has to do, again, with Donald Trump's speech and all of that declassified information.
China is one of the biggest collectors of data on the planet. So if you take that 220 million voter rolls and you combine it with something called the SF-86, those are the security clearance applications that were compromised back in 2015, 22 million files. And then you combine it with all of the health information that's been hacked, you can really build this kind of digital composite of an individual. And you can use that for, voter registration fraud. You can use that for identity theft. And significantly, you can also use it to recruit American citizens to your efforts. So it's not just about the collection of the data around the vote. Exactly. Right.
And I would say that China has all of our information. Mm-hmm. Just believe that, know that it's too late to stop it. And I would also remind everybody that China is America's number one adversary. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about that. Don't lose sight of that. And Chairman Xi's coming here. When? In September, I think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the thing is, too, is like people... I don't think people actually care about privacy as much as they may claim, and that anyone who's ever downloaded TikTok has basically given China an enormous amount of information. And at the age of social media, people pretty much put everything online. I think there isn't really much of an assumption of privacy anymore anywhere, which is probably for the worst. But yes, I think it would be fair to assume China does have a lot of this already in their possession.
And I want to thank everybody for watching on WD Americans Facebook Live. Thank you for doing that. And also on Talk Red on the many different platforms where you can see us there. I appreciate it. You can follow us also on Rumble and YouTube. We're just starting to build that as we build this show. Please follow us. Palumbo, Booker, Justified, PB&J Podcast is where you could do that. Matt, as we look forward to the week upcoming, what do we look for this week?
Well, my weekly response to that question is I ran. Which, by the way, I forgot to mention during the show, it does seem like China's energy imports are taking a pretty significant hit from our war in Iran. Well, I think Trump's not calling it a war. Our
conflict.
Our epic operation in Iran.
Epic Fury.
Epic Fury. It's the epic one now.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was actually like an intended secondary impact, but it is one that is happening. Besides that, I guess Todd Blanche related stuff.
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned him. He had that hearing this week. Yeah,
it was all showboating from the liberals as usual, and
that's
it's all the confirmation hearings. It's just to farm social media clips of you go, how dare you do blah 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 blah, and they don't actually care anything.
Something else that we went through this hour and didn't talk about was Jack Smith, and I really wanted to hit that. Maybe we can real quick before we're finished. But he, the Senate and the House of Representatives, they went nuts this week because they found out that Jack Smith lied under oath in testimony, because not only did he have their phone records, but he had their phone communication. He saw what was said and what was done. So now will he be, brought up on perjury charges? He should be, because he
certainly should be. And I mean, it's. I don't think people like to have their text messages read. So it's more incentive to do so. It will be interesting if there are liberals whose text he was going through who have to pretend to not care for political reasons.
Yeah,
but
there were a few Democrats in that
I
list.
figured.
Yeah, not all Republicans. So thank you very much for watching us. We are the PB&J podcast, the sanity sandwich in a chaotic world. Matt, have a great week.
You too. Thank you.
You have been watching a no-budget production, the PB&J podcast.